Okay. Well, good morning again to everybody. My name is Craig Graham. I am one of the customer success managers here at Skybits. On behalf of myself and the whole Skybits team, we want to thank you and welcome you to week 5 of our Skybits Training Thursdays. Weeks 1 and 4 are also available on our Skybits YouTube page, or YouTube channel, I guess I should say. Please make sure that you go there, you subscribe. All our recordings are there for our previous 4 weeks of training. So please go there and subscribe. Again, we want to thank you all for attending. We hope that these hour sessions have been good for you, have improved your understanding of the website and the tool that we have created for you guys to use and make sure that you understand it to its full potential. The intent of these trainings is definitely to provide you a live demonstration of with very few PowerPoint slides. Just a few housekeeping measures here before we get started. We have muted all of your participants, so there's limiting of the background noise. If you have muted yourself and you want to ask a question later on, you will have to unmute yourself. We're not able to do that at that point. We have factored in some time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation, so if you want to hold your questions till then, that would be great. Otherwise, there is a way that you can type in your questions into a chat function during the presentation, and somebody will be able to chat back with you and answer your questions at that point. All sessions are being recorded again, and they will be on our Skybits YouTube channel as well. So to start off this week, we're going to be talking about tank alarm setup, using the alarm features to really maximize your efficiency with the tank data that you can get out of the system. We're going to initially be talking about setting up tank alarms, defining those tank alarm parameters, selecting tank alarm email recipients and how to do that, and also setting up location and organization type of alarms. So in order for our team to ensure that we're providing you with the best information that's important to you and in running your business, please, at the end of the presentation or the webinar, fill out the survey that you will get. It only takes about 2 minutes to do it, and that helps us, be more targeted towards what your needs are, and that's our goal in these training sessions. So with that said, we will jump right in here to the training. I know last week, or 2 weeks ago, we actually talked about the tank setup, how you set up a tank, how you put in the gallons, the usage, making sure that all the tank information is there for getting that unit to start calling in and providing data. This week, we're kind of going right off of that, and it's the second stage of that tank setup, and that is called the alarm setup. So with that, we're going to go into a unit here on the website that has been set up. It's been given the information where it's located at, the tank height and all of that information will say is already done. And we will go into the alarm tab at the top of the page. Now what that does is in setting up your tank initially, you always want to also add the alarms to this. So if you're setting the tank up yourself, the best thing to do is to do your initial setup with the tank heights and the tank parameters, and then also go into the alarms tab to set up the alarms for that tank. You get it all set up in the beginning. There's no forgetting and not going back and setting up the alarms, because the alarms is a very important aspect of your tank information. The alarms will allow you to see when you hit a low level, when you hit a critical low level, making sure that you get product back out to that tank before it runs dry, and those type of things. So the alarm section is really goes hand in hand with the setup of a tank. So once you set the tank up and you go to the alarms page, you will see a couple of sections. You'll see the tank details section, which is a static section on all pages. And you will also see the alarm setup section. The alarm setup section has a lot of information in it. Not that you have to do and fill out all this information, but the most important and the best practices to fill out are your low alarm level and your critical low alarm level. What those two mean is that your low alarm is basically telling you that this is where I want to be notified once my tank gets to this level, because I know to dispatch a truck out there to get product put back in that tank and fill it up. It's going to take me 3 days to get that order done, get it processed, and get it shipped out to the customer. So I want to make sure that I have enough in there when I hit that low level alarm that it's going to give me enough time to do all that process and get that over to the customer. The critical low alarm level is telling me that, you know what, if I hit that level, I've missed my time frame and I've got to get this out to the customer ASAP. Still have enough product in the tank to give me a day or so to get out there, but I need to make sure that I get that product out there now. So the two levels, we default them to 30% of your tank capacity and 10% of your tank capacity. So when you do this, why I say it was important in the beginning is to make sure that those default levels are good for that tank. If you have a 1,000-gallon tank and you do 30% of that as your low level and leave it at the default, that might not work properly for your tank. So it is very important that you look at how is my usage at that tank? Is it a new tank? Do I need to let it run a little bit to get some really good data on it? If it's an older tank that's out there and I've never set up the alarms, what is the usage of that tank? How fast does it go? How slow does it go? And that will help you determine what type of percent to put in there. So we'll just leave it here at 30% for your low level and then your 10% at your critical low level. And you can make those adjustments. You can put in 40% for your low. You can put in 20% for your critical low. Again, it really depends on your needs for that specific tank. Some customers have developed a plan that they know how all their tanks go, how detailed they are in the usage, and they can pretty much say, we want to do a 32% for our low, and we'll do a 15% for our critical low. So they want all their tanks set up that way. Again, it really depends on you as the customer and how your business operates. So it can be set up all the same, or you can set up individual tanks, your higher movers, your faster movers, with specific parameters. Now, if you look down the next section there, it says low temp alarm. If your sensor has temperature gauge on it, you can set that. It's not a highly used section, but what that does is that helps you get an alarm if your temperature inside that tank, if it's important to have a temperature sensor in there, you may want to be able to get that low temp alarm or your high temp alarm to let you know that, hey, the temperature inside that tank has fluctuated enough that it's causing some issues or could cause some issues with the product inside the tank. So we have that ability to do that. You have the tank minimum heel, which again, if you cannot get to the bottom 6 inches of the tank, and you know that bottom 6 inches is 100 gallons, you can put that number in there, and then it knows that you will not ever be using that 100 gallons, and it kind of uses that as a calculation in making sure that we're providing the right gallons and inches that are in the tank for you. Your forecast daily usage, that will come as you build the tank data. So it's not going to be an immediate number that you get. We put a default in there of 0.10 gallons just to make sure that there's a number in there so that it will calculate for you. If you have it set at 0, that basically puts that default and says we'll never calculate your forecasted daily usage. We usually want a good 35 to 60 days worth of data to give you some really good forecast daily usage so that you know on a daily basis how much product am I really going to be using. So that'll help you also in your forecasting of your alarm levels and that sort of stuff to make sure that you have enough time to get back out there and take care of the customer. The 35-day average daily usage will populate once it gets to that point. Once you hit that 35-day time frame, you will start getting some good calculations in that section. You move there to the middle where it talks about the high alarm and the critical high alarm. We have those set in there. 99% of our tanks and your tanks drain on a daily basis, so you really don't need to worry about these. But in case you have a tank like a waste tank that fills up on a daily basis, so you're putting waste into that tank and it fills up daily, you want to know when it gets to a certain level, a high alarm level or a critical high alarm level, to send a truck out to empty that tank instead of fill that tank. So we do have the opposite of your low level and critical low. In case you do have a tank that fills on a daily basis, you can use that. The expected call inventory is basically saying once you set your parameters on when your units are supposed to call out, that tells you, okay, after 1,519 minutes, that unit didn't call out, then it's going to provide you an error message, and that's something that as we go, as I think we talked about earlier in one of the sessions, the NRUs and that sort of stuff is to checking the unit, troubleshooting, and all of that. So it just kind of is telling you that's a static number there that will not change unless you make a change to how long your calls are going to be. Usage to reorder and usage to safety stock alarm, those are also kind of go hand in hand with your low level and critical low. Here you go by days instead of by percent at gallons. This will just tell you that if you want to use the reorder alarm, how many days in advance do you want to get an alarm that says, hey, it's about time to reorder? And also, the same type of thing with your safety stock is how many days out do you want to make sure that we have that safety stock in there? So we know that if you have 3 days of safety stock, that if you hit that alarm, you're down to your last 3 days, and you need to make sure, according to the daily usage, that you need to get an order created in your system and get product out to that customer. So there's multiple alarms that you can set up to use to make sure that you are aware of what is going on at that specific tank, and that you can get product out to your customer to make sure that you do not run them out of fuel or chemical or whatever it is that you're providing to them. Over on the left-hand or the right-hand side, you see the short fill drain detect and the fill drain detect volume. Those also were discussed 2 weeks ago in the tank setup. And just to hit on them briefly, the fill detect is just that. You want to know a good fill, usually 60%, 65% of the tank capacity is a pretty good fill. So you want to set that fill detect to 60% of your tank capacity. So once you get to that point, you know that you're doing a good fill. You're filling it higher than that 60%. Your short fill is basically just saying anything, if you look at the numbers on here, anything over 200 gallons is a good fill. Anything between 50 gallons and 199 gallons is basically saying, I didn't fill it completely. I wasn't as efficient as I could have been in filling this tank, but I had 75 gallons left on the tank. I was going by this spot. I called in, dispatcher said, yeah, drop it there because they could use an extra 75 gallons. So it's just kind of giving you that leeway of knowing that, you know, between 50 and 200 gallons, I'm just dropping off some product. It's not a full, good, efficient fill. On your volume delta and your rate change alarm, the rate change alarm is calculated in the background and does give you some, excuse me, does give you some good information in regards to amount of product in the tank, what's being used, did it change by a certain rate? If you're used to having that product go at 5% every day, and you've set your rate change alarm to look at the 7-day average and the 35-day average, and you say, I want to know if it changes by 50%. So those two averages, they work together in the background, and it says, yeah, it changed by more than 50%. So it will send a notification to the website to say, hey, there was a rate change, it went up or it went down a little bit. So it's just letting you know as the owner of this tank and the supplier that there might be an issue where they're starting to use more product, or there might be something going on at the tank level that somebody needs to go out and check on it and make sure that, you know, there is no issues with the tank at that point. Now your volume delta is a little bit different than that. It looks at the gallons and the inventory level when the previous volume change was set. So it's a little bit more complicated to go into. It is something that, you know, if you want to use that, you know, your customer success manager can talk you through it and help you to give you a better understanding of how that volume delta alarm actually works. The next section down is your device alarm setup. And what that means is you just set the parameters under the alarm setup section. So these are the parameters that I want my tank to notify me at when it hits it. So if I'm doing my low level and my critical low level alarm, I'm saying I want that at 30% and 10%. Now, what do I want it to do when it hits that level? And that's what the device alarm setup section is all about. So when that unit hits that 30% low level alarm, do I want it to make a call to the website? If I don't check that box, what that tells me is that I won't have a call to the website until the next scheduled call. So if I have just a one call a day at 6 in the morning, and that unit hits a low alarm at noon, I won't know that until 6 in the morning the next day. So I would always suggest, as a best practice, to always check the call on low alarm and call on critical low alarm. What that does, again, is it makes sure that once that unit hits that level, it's going to make a call out to the website at that time to make sure that it posts it to the website. And then, as I said, we'll talk about emails as well, that it would then send an email off to whoever you asked it to send an email to alert them that, hey, we just hit low alarm or we just hit our critical low alarm. In doing that, checking these 3 boxes, the call out on percent change is a good box to check if it's a product that you want to really keep a close eye on. Excuse me. It's not a necessity to do the call out on percent change, but what that does is you can change that percent to whatever you'd like it to be. So if you know that my tank is always going to do 5% every day, and you want to know that, hey, if it hits that 10% change level-wise, I want to be alerted, because it should never hit 10%. It should always be 4, 5, 6%, but we should never be at 10%. Something might be going on at the tank. So you could check that box as well. And what this section does is it looks at the alarm wake test interval. We go down to the lowest we go is 31 minutes. And so what that tells the unit to do is it says, wake up every 31 minutes and check these 3 things that you've got a check mark next to. Look at it. Tell me if any of those are there. If not, just go back to sleep. So it wakes up in a split second, checks, and goes back to sleep. If by chance the next 31 minutes comes around and it says, yeah, I hit low alarm, at that point in time, you will get a call to the website. It'll wake up, see that it's low alarm, and it will say, okay, I need to make a phone call to the website. So it'll call the website and post that data for you. So that's why it's important to check these so that you get that right away, especially if you just have 1 call a day. That thing hits low alarm at noon, you're going to get, by 12:30, you're going to get an alarm posted on the website that says, hey, I'm in critical low right now, not 6 o'clock the following morning. So it's always nice to have that. There are no charges for that. These calls are extra. They're alarms that trigger a response, and therefore you're on a 1 call a day rate plan. You're fine and set to go. Now the data logging section here is really if you want see a change in your tank, 5% data logging, what it will do is every time it hits, it'll wake up, it'll check. Every time it hits that 5%, it basically logs it in its memory, keeps it in its memory, and on the next scheduled call, the data logging will then post all those changes to the website. It won't post it immediately at a 31-minute wake up. It does wait until its next scheduled call and then post that to the website. So you could get extra calls in there as well by saying, or extra reports in there as well by saying, here's what it was doing during this 24-hour time frame. Here's all your data logging changes that we get from that as well. And again, all this stuff can be really talked about in more detail with your customer success manager in some additional training of that sort if you really want to test it out, see how it works for you, because there is a lot of information here on alarms and how to set them up and what they are, how they can work for you. So it's a really good idea to delve into some of this and talk with your CSM about that. Over on the right-hand side too, you can also have it call out when it detects a fill. or a drain, again, depends on what type of product you have. Your call schedule, normally you have that automatically set up with how many calls per day you're going to get, usually on your rate plan, and that would be set up accordingly. You can change the time that your unit actually calls out. You can change that time to any one of these, 12 a.m. all the way through 11 p.m. for the day. What that does is during that hour, if you say I want my unit to call in at 2 a.m., it's not going to call in at exactly 2 a.m. It's going to choose a time between 2 a.m. and 2:59 a.m., and that will be its time to call in for as long as it is active. It chooses it itself. If we allowed everybody to set up calls that come in at 3 a.m., it could overwhelm the server, so we've allowed the unit to make its choice during that hour when it wants to call in. So that is a thing that you can change. If you have 2 calls a day, you can set one to call in at 3 a.m. and one to call in at noon or 3 in the afternoon, depending on, again, your business preferences and how best that fits your business. Okay, let's run down here to the email alert definitions. Now, this is going to tell you or allow you to provide an email when one of your alarms are triggered. And the way you do that is you can select the user here, choose your user that you want to go ahead and have a alarm email sent to, and you would just click Add Alarm. Once you add that alarm, what it does is it pops up a box where you can check what do you want an email to be sent for. So once that email is sent, or once you check these boxes, once that alarm is triggered, this person will receive an email. So you can say, yeah, I want them to get this, critical low and low. I also want them to get when the unit goes into a low battery status and a fill detect. Once you do that, you hit Save All. And what that does is it saves this parameter. And once the units go into one of these statuses, you will get an email from the system. You can activate them, or you can remove that as no longer an active email. So if the person is no longer there or moves into a new position, and they don't want to continue to get these emails, you can come back in here and you can inactivate the user if necessary. One other way, if they're not a typical user of the system, if you have not given them a username and a password to access the system, just a driver that's in the field that needs to get an email just to alert them that this tank is a low battery, and maybe when you go out, they need to take a battery out to this tank. It could be maintenance people that don't really need to use the system, but they just need to be alerted to something. You can do that over in this section where it says enter an email address. You can enter their specific email address and just hit Add Alarm. What that does is that just adds, again, underneath the alarm alert definition, it adds their email, and then you just check the boxes again to make that choice for them as to what you want them to receive an email on. So once that's all done, you are also able to, in this section, if they want a text message instead of an email address, you can also do a text message to them instead of an email. And the way you do that is you just have to find out what your email address is to your phone. And once you have that, you put that email address in there. And most of the email addresses to the phone are like it's your phone number at your provider and their basic connection to them. Like in some cases, the number would be an 815-342-1301 at att.mms.net. And that's your email address to your phone, and when that happens, that will send out a text message to them instead of an email. Some people like that better just because they see their text message quicker than looking for an email on their phone. So some folks like to do that, but so that is an option, and you do have the ability to send it that way. So with all that said, that's how you set up an individual tank alarm. We also have the ability to go to your organization and your location. And if you click on the organization, you are able to open that up, and you're able to set up your same process that we just did on the tank level. You can also do that on the organization level. So this allows you to, again, select the user and add the alarm. And what this does is that any tanks that are within that organization, at that point, you can set up and say, I want this person to get a critical low and a low alarm and a low battery alarm. And again, you hit save all. And now anytime any tank within that organization goes into any of these statuses, that person will get an email from the system. So it can become overwhelming if you set them up on an organizational level to see all tanks. But it is if you have a dispatch group or a driving group that needs to see those emails, you can set up the group under users and then use that group as who gets the email, so that it's not just all going to one person. You're sending it to a group of people that would look at that group email box. So there are ways to do that for the organization. And there's also ways that you can look at it and say, okay, this location, Sycamore location, I want them also, any tank that's in that location that goes driver ABC does 15 tanks, and he watches those 15 tanks. So I want to make sure that that location has an email alert going to that driver. So again, it's the same process. You select the user, you add the alarm, and it will then pop up where you can select what alarms are there that you want to go. And again, you hit save all, and that will send you to the location alert. So you can set up all these alarms by organization, by location structure, or you can set them up at each individual tank specifically for any user within your organization. And even if you have a customer that you have set up as a user, you're able to send them alarms as well, so that they're just kind of keeping an eye on it too, that they see it. Some customers do like to have access to that information, and if you're willing to give them access as a user, then you can also set them up to receive the alarms. With all that said, that pretty much covers our alarm section. And if you have any questions at this point, we'd be more than happy to entertain them and talk to you in regards to the questions that you may have. So I'll kick it to Ira.
Yeah, thanks, Craig, and thanks everybody for attending. At this point, we'll go ahead and open up for questions. If you do have a question, feel free to just click the question icon in your control panel or raise your hand, and I can mute you, or if you've muted yourself, you'll have to come off mute yourself. You can also submit questions via the text chat question window, and we can answer them from there as well. So we'll go ahead and open up at this point. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and raise your hands or all right. We have a question from Elaine Ferreira. Elaine, yes?
Hey, yeah, we have most of our tanks are set to call in twice a day. That, they're separated out 13 hours in between them. When I set these alarms up for it to call out on a low and call out on a critical low, am I understanding correct that that is not additional? That I'm not incurring extra costs by setting those up to call out at those levels?
That is correct. You would not incur any additional cost on those calls there. If you have a 2-time-a-day rate plan, you get those 2 calls separated by, I think you said 13 hours. Those are the 2 calls that you're paying for. You get these additional calls just to help alert you that something is going on. Something has changed at the tank level. So you don't have to wait for that 13-hour difference to be able to receive that information. So there's no additional cost to those calls that come out of that section.
Okay, great.
Does that answer your question? Excellent.
All right, thanks, Elaine. All right, next question is from Morgan Dwar. Morgan, I think you may have muted yourself. There you go. You're off mute.
The alarm levels, is there a way, like all of our tanks are the same? It's like basically we have a pretty standard alarm level. Is there like a template or like copy from or default so that we don't have to, I mean, we still want to look at every single one, but maybe an easier, more efficient setup?
Yeah, there's not a really efficient setup yet on the website for you to do that in mass, if that's what you're asking. The way to do that in mass is to, if you have a customer success manager, you can send that information in an Excel spreadsheet. If you export all your tanks off the website and then just go in and say, for my low level and my critical low level, this is what I want them all to be. Send that to your CSM if you have one. If you don't, you can send that to our customer success or our customer service group email address, and they will do that in the background for you.
What about not mass? So like as we go forward one at a time, or maybe a location will have 3. We just have to go into every single one. There's no like default template that we can customize.
not at this time. There's not. It is something that may be part of some of our new website design.
Okay.
I will definitely pass that along to our design group and see if it's going to be there. If it's not, we'll put it onto what we call the storyboard, basically, and see if that can be something added in the future. But that's
Beautiful.
a good point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. All right, the next question looks like is from Cynthia Barrios. Cynthia, I believe you've muted yourself. Oh. I think we actually may have.
Hi. I was just wondering, how do we know how many calls a day we pay for? I know earlier he said 2 of them. Is that?
I didn't. I'm sorry, I'm not catching it. Your question.
The low level. I'm sorry. Every time that it calls in, like how much you have in the tank. is each tank, how many times do you normally pay for? Like, I know that right here it says your call frequency should be reflected on your monthly bill. Is all of them universally able to call 2 times and you don't pay extra? Or after you say?
I think I understand what you're asking. You get, if you have a 1 call a day rate plan, you get up to 2 calls a day. So you can set your tanks to call 2 times a day, and you're only charged that 1 time a day rate plan.
Okay.
If you have a 3 time a day rate plan, you get up to 4 calls, I think it is, that you can set your tanks for. So you do get a little extra in there, depending on your rate plan. You get like 1 or 2 extra calls that you're paying for, and then the calls that we talked about today on low alarm and critical low and the expected change, percent change. Those calls are additional at no charge. So you do get those extra calls, but you're not paying for them.
Okay, awesome. That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, yep.
All right, thanks, Cynthia. The next question came in online, Craig. It says, I'm not quite understanding the data logging. Can you briefly explain that again?
Sure. Data logging is just, let me get the actual definition and I will read it to you. Data logging checks on each alarm interval for a percent change greater than the percent you put into that box. So if you put in 50%, it will check that against the alarm interval for that percent change greater than what you put in. And what it does is it records that in its memory, and then on your next phone call that's scheduled, the ones that you're paying for, it will then add all that information into the website. So you could get, if there was a lot of change in there from the percent that you put in, if there was a lot of movement within that tank, it will record all of that movement at its scheduled phone call to the website. Does that clear that up a little bit? If not, what I can do is we can send out an email to you specifically if you want to reach out to customer care, and customer care can give you the actual full definition and maybe some additional examples of how that works.
Yeah, and I said, yes, that answers the question. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, next question is from Deborah Papa. Deborah, I think you unmuted yourself. All right. Let's see. I think the question was answered. So Deborah, if you still have a question, feel free to come off mute. Okay. And then let's see, we got that one. I think that looks like all the questions currently. So if you have anyone else has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, hit the question button. All right. If not, Craig, I'll go ahead and turn it back to you. I think one of the things that we want to make sure for everybody on this call to know, we are going to be kind of readjusting the schedule on the trainings. So instead of being weekly, we're going to do them every other week, kind of give you back some time and allow, not take up as much time in your calendar. So it'll be a bi-weekly call. The next call or the next training call will be on March the 11th at the same time. So the webinar registration that you guys have already registered for will still be on your calendar. the GoToWebinar doesn't have the ability, I guess, to cancel the meeting maker. So I'll put out a note again next week reminding everybody that there is no call next week, but we certainly look forward to seeing you back, on the 11th of March. So with that, Craig, I'll kick it back over to you to wrap up.
Perfect. Thanks, Heather. We just really thank all of you for showing up today, attending these sessions. They're made for you to help you as our partner, and making sure that we help you leverage all the tools that we have provided to you, from the monitor and the sensor all the way to the website and the data that it provides. So if you have any additional recommendations or ideas for future sessions, please reach out to us and let us know. We'd be happy to put that together as we move forward. As I was saying, on March 11th, that session will be some advanced tank setup. It's going to be leveraging all the components of your solution. It's going to be talking about assigning client units to host units, moving a tank to a new location and organization, exchanging a remote device, and also swapping out units. So there's some really good information that'll be coming up in that session, so please sign up for that. And we'll be looking forward to meeting with you again in 2 weeks, and we hope that you all have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much.